Welcome to Vlog 2, Skills versus Capacities in Speed and Agility.
Again, let's just recap on what is a skill and capacity issue. So a skill issue is associated with poor motor control, and training improvements typically focus on reinforcing good movements and good movement habits through coaching cues and progressions and regressions. In comparison, a capacity issue is associated with more of a physical quality or a structural issue within the athlete. For example, he has poor ankle mobility, and this is remedied through more intervention-based exercises. For example, if you have poor ankle mobility, it's ankle mobility exercises. It is important to stress, however, these are not mutually exclusive and they can cross over.
Athlete A will demonstrate a capacity issue in a speed drill. Context: Athlete A is a 20-year-old professional footballer who has suffered both ACL and MCL injuries to his right knee. As we watch Athlete A perform an acceleration, a number of capacity issues can be highlighted. These are further highlighted when creating a kilogram from toe off to touchdown. When you observe the touchdown of Athlete A's first stride, we see a capacity issue at the knee and ankle. The athlete sinks into the floor as a result of lack of stiffness in the ankle and knee, and as we roll the clip on, we see what I like to call naughty knee roll, where the knee rolls over and thus limits the system's stiffness and limiting the athlete's ability to store and release that elastic energy to project himself and his hips forward, thus demonstrating an issue as being able to apply and then use force to project forward is a key determinant for successful acceleration performance. Such capacity issues are further highlighted when creating kinogram from toe off to touchdown. As seen in the kinogram, due to his capacity issue at the knee, when the athlete moves into toe off and starts to initiate his swing phase, we do not observe any true extension at the knee. Ideally, triple extension at ankle, knee and hip would be observed. In addition, as touched on previously, this lack of ankle and knee stiffness influences the athlete's projection of the hips forward, and is why I believe we see a non-neutral bent over spine, which in turn influences the athlete's ability to switch his limbs as he's not allowing himself enough space or time to switch. Although what has been explained could also be considered a skill issue, the issues observed all exist as a result of a capacity issue within the athlete's structure, previous ACL and MCL tears, and I believe strengthening exercises at the knee and around the knee in addition to specific speed work would see improvements to the athlete's acceleration. As such, training suggestions and improvements for the athlete should concern bounding work. Makala has suggested bounding to be the most specific exercises, using the stretch short in cycle to develop acceleration, and in addition demonstrates very similar ground contact time to initial acceleration. In addition, specific lower body strength development work should be suggested, developing the individual's rate of force development and max strength. This should be done both unilaterally, as sprinting is unilateral in nature. In addition, sprint-specific isometrics can be suggested, where the individual holds and positions a triple extension at the ankle, knee and hip. And furthermore, banded acceleration starts or heavy sled drills can be used to improve on the athlete's rate of
Force development and projection. As it is suggested, a high resistance results in high force overload, producing a more horizontal orientated and mechanically effective posture.
Moving on to athlete B, who will present a skill issue in a speed drill. For context, athlete B is a 23-year-old semi-professional footballer who is a goalkeeper and has never been exposed to any specific speed or acceleration training. The first thing I notice when assessing athlete B is how upright his stance is. Ideally, the technical model for acceleration would see a postural lean in the intended direction of travel, and a lean which gradually rises to upright as the athlete strides through. In addition to this, a low ankle recovery would be observed, with the striding foot almost brushing the floor for the first 4 to 6 steps, as opposed to athlete B, who starts off very upright and limited low ankle recovery is present. In addition, we also see a lack of preparation from the athlete, with limited ankle flexion before touchdown, when the ankle is not prepped for a stiff landing, and therefore the elastic energy is lost and the athlete fails to use this to project himself forwards. What is apparent when watching the athlete is his centre of mass moves from side to side with each stride, as opposed to an ideal technical model, where although there is a postural lean for acceleration, there is a nice stable spine, unlike athlete B, who is curved over and therefore unstable, and is hence why we may see this side-to-side movement. Furthermore, when we assess the athlete's kinogram, we see a very vertical shin angle, as opposed to a nice horizontal shin angle which projects the athlete forward. However, at toe off, the athlete does get into some nice shapes with triple extension observed at the ankle, knee and hip. Although we cannot rule out a capacity issue again due to this individual's injury history, severe ankle ligament injury, hence why it may be difficult for him to prep for each stride to ensure stiff ankles are present on landing. I think focusing more on the motor control aspect and reinforcing good movement would be far more beneficial to the athlete than any capacity work. As such, improvements for the athletes would look like postural wall drills, consisted of wall holds, switches, and so on, enabling the athlete to be exposed to good movement and allowing them to find that ideal posture for projection. Constraint-based drills, so we see here a kneeling resisted axle start, where the athlete's able to find his ideal projection angle. So these drills, if they come up too low, he may trip over himself, or if he comes up too high, he's almost jumping up. It's about finding that ideal angle of projection.
Then coaching cues, video and reflections. The coaching cue I like to use is the idea that when you punch something, you punch it with a tense fist. And it's the same with your leg. You punch the ground and you stiffen up your leg.
Moving on to agility, I believe it's first important to understand, well, what is agility? With the most recent definition in research being a rapid whole body movement with a change of velocity or movement in response to a stimulus. However, we need got to relate this to the athlete and his sport. And I believe agility in football must involve the manipulation of space in order to create or protect goal scoring opportunities, and this idea that space is created by the individual's athletic agility ability. So athlete A will demonstrate a capacity issue in agility.
Specifically, change of direction, which is essential for my athlete in order to create or take space in football. As we watch athlete A perform a 180-degree change of direction turn, what is clear to me is there's a hesitancy to rapidly apply the brakes when working on his right leg, and really react and push off against the floor to reorganise his lower limbs to accelerate away. This is highlighted as the athlete almost collapses into the movement when he accelerates away. Ideally, we would see much stiffer ankles and knees, allowing the athlete to strike the floor hard to push away.
The athlete, however, has a good grasp of the skill required for successful change of direction, as seen by his turn on his left leg, where we see less steps to apply the brakes, realigns the body faster, allowing the athlete the ability to react against the floor to push off and accelerate hard away. Thus, this is why I've concluded athlete A to have a capacity issue associated with his right knee. Improvements for athlete A would concern improving the eccentric strength.
Unilaterally. Why? Because greater eccentric strength allows the body to be more efficient at braking, allowing the athlete to realign faster to attack the space in any new intended direction. It should also take part in deceleration plyometrics, drop jump sticks with rebounds, again a unilateral focus, and a focus on putting the brakes hard with stiff landings and applying forces fast away. Consistent exposure to decelerations and change of directions should be recommended.
Moving on to athlete B, who will again demonstrate a skill issue with agility. When watching athlete B perform the 180-degree change of direction turn, a skill issue is present. The athlete, as we can see here, takes an excessive amounts of steps to decelerate. In addition to this,
he fails to really, truly lower his centre of mass, shorten his stride length to reorganise his lower limbs, to strike the floor hard and accelerate away. And hence, this is why we see him almost turning on the spot to reaccelerate. In addition, we fail to see the push-off leg move away from the body's centre of mass, which allows the athlete to really push the ground away to accelerate away. Although we cannot rule out a capacity issue with the athlete's previous injury history, when we observe his left versus right side here, we see a much better change of direction. However, I still believe the athlete would benefit greatly from a skill-based intervention. Such training suggestions for the athlete would consist of lateral wall drills with holds and switches where we can reinforce good movement patterns and put the athlete in a position specific to change of direction. Furthermore, deceleration drills can be used where you get consistent exposure to decelerations, where the athlete is cued to whack the ground and lowers centre mass when braking. Furthermore, we can start to add constraints as seen here using a band with resisted decels. A visual has been made detailing the key points from each athlete. So athlete A in speed demonstrated a capacity issue where it had a lack of system stiffness, and interventions for this would be unilateral rate of force element, max strength, whereas athlete B for speed demonstrated a skill issue, and interventions for this are more regressions of the movements with wall drills, banded axle starts, and so on and so forth. Whereas athlete A for agility demonstrated a capacity issue, again lack of system stiffness and its braking ability. So again, the intervention would be more unilateral eccentric strength. Whereas athlete B demonstrated a skill issue. He didn't chop his steps fast enough. He didn't put his leg outside his centre of mass. and therefore that will be very much progression and regression of the movement through deceleration drills, coaching and cueing. Again, it's important to stress, however, that these are not mutually exclusive and both skill and capacity issues can overlap.